Hi everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back to some EVE Online, and in today's video I want to discuss some EVE Online lore because over Christmas we got a new Chronicle from CCP and it's chock full of interesting information. And I want to cover that. So if you have not read the Chronicle just yet, I would say head over there first and give it a read, because it's really a pretty good Chronicle that deals with a lot of the current events that are happening in EVE Online, which I think makes it pretty damn interesting. So let's sit down on the couch here. Let's try and find the Chronicle, and then we'll take a quick look and I'll give some of my thoughts concerning the information that's released here. Now there is still a link right here on the front page, new Chronicle by CCP Delegate 0 called Inheritance, but for people that may come in later, there is a link right here. You can go for backstory, then you can go to Chronicles, and let me see here, we're actually starting with the oldest on this page. Let's see if I can go all the way to the bottom then. Yep, here we go. The last one is called Inheritance. And of course, if you want to read the other Chronicles, if you have some catching up to do about the lore in EVE Online, all of this is definitely worth checking out, because there's a lot of interesting information and background concerning the EVE Online story. But let's touch here on Inheritance. Which really deals with the latest event that have happened in-game lore-wise. And we actually have basically a conversation between Elder Mentor Machi Raish from the Society of Conscious Thought. And these events take place right after he scanned the Titan from Empress Jamel Sarum and basically found out the information that he needed. And then he was destroyed, potted, and the Chronicle basically starts as he wakes up in his new clone, and is then greeted by a Jovian, I think one of the founding members of the Society of Conscious Thought. Not really sure about his name. He's called Archon here, so that was his title with the Society of Conscious Thought, and he calls himself Veniel, who is a Jovian, so one of those elusive members of the Jovian race, and they have a discussion about everything that's been happening. So one aspect here, of course, as he steps out of the pot in his new clone, he did discover that there is like a sentient AI inside the brain of Jamel Sarum, and that basically they have a bit of a tug of war over control, and all of that now actually becomes a little bit of part of known events in the game. So from the books in EVE Online, the players already knew, of course, that this was happening and that the Empress was not herself and was probably not in control of most of her actions, but the capsuleers and the outside world really never knew about that. So there were some hints here and there, but now this has basically been confirmed by a member of the Society of Conscious Thought, and then he was destroyed after that. Luckily he's a capsuleer, so he can wake up in a new pot, and that basically becomes a bit closer, I would say, to established lore. It's just one small step that needs to be taken now to basically have the capsuleers know about this AI that was part of Jamel Sarum, and all the events that surrounded that. And so it would not be outside of the realm of role-playing at the moment anymore to basically have that be a rumor that is known by capsuleers, because the Society of Conscious Thought actually knows this as a fact. Where before, anyone that would say, well, maybe Empress Jamel Sarum is being controlled by an AI entity, you know, that would have been pretty much counter to the rules of role-playing. But that's been settled and it's becoming a part of known lore now. So that is definitely pretty interesting. And after that, it actually goes quite a little bit deeper about the other. Supposedly comes from like a sleeper construct, and it goes very deeply into who the sleepers are. But most interestingly, I think, is that all these events are basically triggered by something that happened way back in history, where it's the Jovians that discovered Caroline's star, but before it exploded, and they discovered that there was like a giant swarm of constructs around that star that was harvesting energy and being used for some reason. So this was not a Jovian construct, And it's not exactly a Dyson sphere, but it's described a bit more as a Dyson swarm. So it's not exactly a full encasing of the star, but there are just so many machines in orbit around the star that they absorb almost all of the energy emitted by that star. And it was used as sort of a power supply for a gigantic wormhole Stargate network. So all of that was being powered by Caroline star and that Dyson swarm that was created around that by someone else. That someone else is actually being presumed to be the Talokan, and that's actually a pretty big shift to what we believe to know about the Talokan. Honestly, if you had asked me about the Talokan and the Jovians, I would have said that they were probably on par with each other. But just that the Talokan were much more nomadic and were doing their own thing, and then you had the Jovians who established empires and states more sedentary. But the speculation from the Jovians who discovered this Dyson swarm is that it was created by the Talokan, and even they were surprised by the magnitude of the project and the aim of that project, which is still an unknown. It's not actually covered inside this chronicle. It's actually the discovery of this Dyson swarm that led the Jovians that we know today to find out about wormhole space and to actually start exploring it there. And that's where they encountered the Sleepers, who they now say with pretty much absolute certainty that they are Jovians that survived the Second Empire. So the current Jovians are actually considered, I think, the Third Empire. And so these guys, the Sleepers, are actually Jovians from the Second Empire who were part of an offshoot of the Jovian society that retreated into an artificial construct, I think, to try and escape or solve the problem of the Jovian disease. And those guys from the Second Empire presumably stumbled upon the Dyson swarm as well, discovered wormhole space and established themselves there because that was, of course, a way to stay secluded and to be able to do their thing inside their artificial constructs. After that, the Jovians almost immediately found out about natural, basically AIs that had developed inside those constructs. And so the existence of the other was already known to the Jovians, or the possibility of another was already known to the Jovians for a very, very long time. But what's also interesting is, of course, I think it's never really been confirmed, you know, the Jovians, are they just basically cloaked or something at the moment and we just can't get to them, but they're still busy in their space. And it turns out that from discovering this Dyson swarm, they had already calculated that at some point in the not too distant future, the star would basically collapse. The entire construction was not meant to last forever. And the Ice Agent 5 event that caused the explosion in all of those same types of stars actually had an impact on the star itself and just increased the rate at which everything was going to become, well, basically apocalyptic. When that star was going to go supernova, the system would no longer be able to absorb all of that energy. And it turns out that, the Jovians are actually way ahead of the game. And they've basically left New Eden. That's what I got from this chronicle. And they left behind maybe around 1,000 representatives to try and steer humanity in New Eden and try and make sure that humanity actually survives here and still has a presence. Although the Jovians, they found out about all of that and they said, screw it, we're not sticking around for whatever is going to come next. So I think that's pretty interesting. From my point of view, I may have been wrong. There may have been hints about that before. But from my point of view, the Jovians were still living in Jove space, even to this point. But it turns out that they are no longer actually living there. And I think that basically covers most of the chronicle here. which honestly it's pretty long. It's a lot of information, and there's going to be a lot of small details that I'm going to miss. You know, they describe the Jovian ship, the Jovian stations that are still actually active for those few that are left behind. Oh, and I'm actually forgetting the end here, because in the end, I also get the feeling that the final Jovians are also in the process of leaving, or just are really taking even more of a step back now with the return of the drifters. And they basically gave their seat on Concord, on the Concord Council, on the DED Council, to the Society of Conscious Thought. And an interesting line in that conversation was that the Jovians considered the capsuleers to be one of the best hopes for humanity to continue on in New Eden, and that we were a force, a group that needed to be shepherded and basically protected a little bit. And so this representative from the Society of Conscious Thought, who now will have a seat next to 4 seats representing the Empire and then 4 seats representing Concord, he might just be a little bit more on our side, and that could be basically an engine that CCP could use to provide us with more freedom inside the game, to give us a lore reason why Concord would do or not do certain actions that would actually be to the advantage of the capsuleers. So that's of course pretty interesting as well, and could have huge ramifications for the story to come. Now that basically we know that the Jovians are gone and they're completely retreating from the scene, and it's the Society of Conscious Thought that are basically taking over their role as shepherds of the capsuleers and the New Eden cluster. I feel that what's interesting about that is that the Jovians, we knew that they were not all powerful, but they were way more powerful than the capsuleers or the empires, and they could basically right any wrong that we would do, or solve any conflict that we would actually create that would become problematic, and if we were not really aware of the consequences of our actions. But with them being gone, CCP basically says, well, here you go guys, all that's really left in New Eden, despite all of these ancient mysteries, is us. It's the capsuleers and the empires that we know, and we'll have to figure it out. And I think what this obviously also opens up is the possibility that at some point we'll be able to create our own stargates, and then of course the first most likely destination for those stargates is going to be Jove space as we know it, as we have it on the map. But it's going to be empty of Jovians, so it's not like we're going to step into Jovian territory and then be greeted by the Jovians, who of course are supposed to have way more technology than we do, and be a completely different type of society. So it's just going to be like abandoned Jovian sites. And who could be there? Well, we could have the Sancha because of their wormhole technology. They could have made their way there. I can also see the rogue drones having found their way there, and maybe any other factions that could make for an interesting storyline, interesting content in new systems that CCP is going to open up. And it's probably then going to be, of course, the Jovian territories that have been completely abandoned by the Jovian civilization itself. So overall, you know, this is just a huge amount of lore. This puts really a lot of things into contrast. It answers a lot of questions, but it also raises quite a few of them. I actually also forgot to mention one of the biggest ones, you know, and it's really one of those questions. It's about Talokan. As I've said before this Chronicle, I had the feeling that they were basically on par of the Jovians, or on par to the Jovians in technological capabilities, but the idea here is that there's not just one Dyson swarm out there, but there's going to be a lot more of them, and the entirety of wormhole space has actually been shifted, created, molded by the Talokan to become wormhole space as it is now, with easy connections from one system to another. And this is of course like a form of technology, a form of changing the universe itself that's probably even beyond what the Jovians can do at the moment. And so this is of an incredible scope. And yeah, assigning that to the Talokan does make it feel a little bit like the Talokan are even beyond the Jovians. They're really an ancient offshoot of humanity, because it's really made very clear that this has nothing to do with aliens, but that could be way beyond anything in the cluster and even the Jovians. And so that really puts all of that into big question marks. Who are the Talokan? What did they do exactly? What was their aim with changing the topography of space itself to create wormhole space? And the sleepers, they're basically just guys that found this on accident and decided, all right, well, you know what, we're gonna try and stay there because it suits our needs. But they didn't really discover wormhole space. It was created by a civilization before them. That's just completely crazy to think about. But there you go, guys. Inheritance, huge chronicle that came out here. Very, very interesting stuff. If you love the lore, I would highly recommend you give it a read. There's also a special episode from the Hydrostatic podcast. Just Google that if you want to listen to it, where they also cover a lot of the known facts and then start to tinfoil some of the information. It's really pretty damn interesting and very cool to see that CCP is continuing on with the story. What I'm most excited about is, of course, that this is opening up the scenario for gate building and us being able to go into Jovian space, where they can now create interesting content that just makes sense lore-wise, considering that unlike what we believed before, I guess the Jovians are actually gone. Where to? Nobody really knows. Anyways, that's it for this video then, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.